Hi, everybody, and welcome to Gotham Baseball Live. I'm Mark Healey, and my co-host is Peter Schwartz. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Mark. Good to talk to you on another Baseball Friday for us. Getting closer to the season. It's almost here for real, and you can just feel it for both the Mets and the Yankees, how excited the fans are to start the season.
Oh, absolutely. And as we were coming on to tape, um, the Mets announced that Carson Bench has made the team. So that's certainly going to be something that we talk with our guest, who's coming up in a few minutes. Pat Ragazzo from SI does a great job. Can't wait to talk to him about the Mets. But obviously, our top story was the announcement yesterday of the great Howie Rose, who is this is going to be his last season, 2026. And I know that you certainly have your own stories about Howie Rose, and certainly I want to hear it. I know some of them, but Howie for me, obviously, Bob Murphy's my number one, but Howie definitely, absolutely one of the great voices in Mets history. And while it's sad that Howie will no longer be the voice of the Mets on the radio, he is going to be staying on and do a lot of the ceremonial stuff, which is great to hear. But tell our listeners and tell me, about your relationship with Howie Rose.
Well, it's kind of a bittersweet feeling. I talked about it on my Sports Bash podcast yesterday because the news happened right before I was going on the air, and the word mensch comes to mind, which is the best way to describe Howie. And I've known him since 1988 when I was an intern at WFAN, and I am proud and humbled and privileged to call him a friend all these years. His professionalism, just what he has meant to the game of baseball, and obviously for the Mets. I mean, he just bleeds Mets, and I get it. But just what he has meant to the game of baseball. Someday he's going to win the Ford Frick Award. There's no question about it. He'll be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But as far as a personal relationship with him, going back to those intern days at WFAN, but the one thing that stands out for me about him, it has nothing to do with baseball. I actually, when he was the Islanders TV announcer for a while, and he had some big shoes to fill in. I mean, when Jiggs McDonald was let go,
Yeah.
and Howie Rose came in, and Islander fans were pissed because all you knew about Howie was Matteau, Matteau, Matteau. And I
And that
always
he was a
felt
huge
like,
Ranger fans too, a huge Ranger
yes,
fan, right?
yeah.
Growing
So,
up.
and I remember telling a friend of mine when Jiggs got fired, and I was mad about that. I remember saying, "You watch, Howie's the backup for the Rangers. He's looking for more work. I'm telling you, the Islanders are going to hire him." And sure enough, the next day, there it was in Newsday that he gets the job. And I don't think Islander fans gave him a chance. I really do. Even and he had a longer stint as the TV announcer for the Islanders than Jiggs McDonald did, but he was great, and he called so many wonderful Islander moments. I always think of the show. I was at the game, but always listening to the clip, the Sean Bates penalty shot, the John Tavares goal that beat the Panthers to finally end the drought of winning a playoff series. But it was at an Islanders game that Howie did something for me that I will always remember. I was trying to get a football play-by-play job, and I was doing some high school games on Long Island, but I couldn't get that big break. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? So one night I see Howie in an Islanders game, and I said, would you mind listening to my tape and just tell me what I'm doing wrong? Why can't I get another opportunity? No problem. A couple of weeks go by. I don't hear anything from him. Walks past me a bunch of times at Islander games. I'm like, maybe he forgot about it. Then one day I walk into the game and I go upstairs. I don't know if you've ever been in the Nassau Coliseum press box, but there's a staircase that goes up to where the press room is. I go in the bathroom and there's Howie washing his hands. Peter, I'm glad I ran into you. Here's your tape back. I listened to it. Here's a couple of things to work on. He talked about location wise on the field, the inflection in my voice. And sure enough, I listened back to it. He was right. He listened to the whole tape. It made me a better football play-by-play announcer. It led to my 8 years with the New York Dragons. It led to an XFL opportunity. And I'll always be grateful for him for that. But I'm not the only one. He has meant a lot to so many people, and I'm going to miss him. And I wanted to make sure, Mark, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I wanted to make sure that Howie was part of the show today. So I brought this along. I don't know if
Nice.
you have this from when they gave this out at a Mets game, but how
Nice.
about this?
That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great, Pete.
Put it in the book. So there you go. I wanted to
Absolutely.
make sure Howie was part of the show today.
I had an interaction with like that with an FAN personality, but it was Mike Breen. So we'll save that story for another day. Talking about demo tapes and helping you get a job.
Yeah.
But Howie has certainly helped me in my career directly and indirectly. So I remember the first time I heard Howie Rose was on the pre and post Mets Extra back when the Mets were first on WFAN. And I remember calling one night because I had just gotten the latest edition of Mets Inside Pitch, and I wanted to talk about Reggie Roby, as who was a Mets prospect at the time. And he took the call and he was like, "Oh, Reggie Roby, Mets Inside Pitch is a great publication and blah blah blah." So you fast forward, 20 some odd years, and I get an assignment. I'm writing now for Mets Inside Pitch. While I was at AP, I did a lot of freelance work. So now I'm writing at Mets Inside Pitch, and I get an assignment to profile Howie Rose, who was just named the new radio voice for the Mets following the retirement of Bob Murphy. So here, like my favorite and Howie Rose, who I loved, certainly on TV and has been such a huge part of the Mets even up until that point. And so I had the hardest time trying to, was not a time where at that time I wasn't beloved by the Mets PR department. So I kind of had to.
Are you now?
Yeah, much better. It's a much better
Okay.
relationship, much better relationship. But at the time, it was a little tough to navigate. But I reached out to Shannon, the lovely Shannon, and
May she rest in peace.
may she rest in peace. She was fantastic. She arranged for me to interview Howie in the Mets cafeteria before a game. So I sat down with Howie. I told him I went to Queens College just like he did. It was a great interview. It was like fantastic. He couldn't have been nicer. He couldn't have been, a better guy. And then when I was writing my book, Gotham Baseball, New York's all-time team, again, it was a situation where I was like, I had an okay relationship with the Mets, but it's like, well, Howie has his own thing, and we don't really arrange those kinds of interviews. So Chris Maskowski, who Madge, who's fantastic,
The immortal one.
who I've known forever, he says, "Oh, you know what? I talked to Howie. It's okay. Just go on the field before." And I believe it was the David Wright's last game. Just go on the field, and I told Howie, "You'll be fine. You just go talk to him. You'll come up to the booth later, or whatever." So I go up to Howie. I reintroduce myself. He says, "How are you?" And I said, "Look," I said, "Madge, Madge told you I was going to interview you." He goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." but then, but then he, but then he spoke to me for almost a half an hour. And I had specific things I wanted to ask him about Tom Seaver and Joan Payson. And again, like one of those situations where if I don't do that interview with Howie, for Mets Inside Pitch, and I don't do that interview with him for the book, the book probably doesn't get written because Howie gave me stuff that I couldn't get anywhere else. So, for me, it's definitely bittersweet, but getting to listen and know Keith Rad and Pat McCarthy. Look, the Mets broadcast is in good hands. Howie's taught them well. They're both excellent. So, again, it's bittersweet, but at the end of the day, he's going out on top, like Dennis Popman, right? He's going out on top, with all of his powers. He's not. None of us are listening to Howie Rose going, "Oh man, he's lost his fastball." If anything, he's throwing harder than he's ever had, right? So certainly, it's a chapter. We're going to be talking about it all season. But Howie's the best, and we wish him well here on this program.
Yeah, there's no question. And he's going to do all the home games this year. And he's also said he's going to do the 3 games at
Right.
Yankee Stadium. And Howie loves the Mets and he loves baseball. And I'm wondering, if the Mets are having a good season, which I think they will. I think they'll be in contention for a playoff spot at least. Um, you think he might have the itch to get in the car and drive down the Jersey Turnpike and go to Philadelphia? I mean, it's close enough. I mean, it's not really
Well,
I know it's an away game, but I mean, you tell it. I don't have the schedule in front of me, so I don't know if there's one of those late season, series in Philly. He's
right.
like, you know what? I'm going to go to those games.
I'm sure he'll change his mind. And as far as the Mets are concerned, certainly we have a lot to talk about with our next guest, and he is Pat Ragazzo. He writes for SI, does a fantastic job with the New York covering the New York Mets. I've gotten to know Pat over the years. Certainly is a guy who's not only on top of his game, but certainly is great with podcasts and fans and people who are always asking Pat questions. Hey, Pat, welcome to the show. Mark Healey and Peter Schwartz here. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks so much for having me. Great to see both of you, Mark and Peter, and thanks so much for having me on.
Well, the timing couldn't be better. Obviously, they just announced that Carson Benj is going to make the team, or at least Joel Sherman has said or reported that Benj is making the team. So that takes away one of my questions, because I was going to ask you, do you think he makes the team? But now that he has made the team, Pat, what does this do for the roster? Are we going to see Tauchman make the team as well? Are they going? I know they announced that Bichette's going to play shortstop, I believe, today.
Yeah.
So they're probably not going to bring a backup shortstop north. In your mind, what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to is Tauchman going to make the team, or are they going to maybe make a trade for a backup shortstop? What do you think they're going to do?
Well, Lindor plays every day, and it seems like Lindor is on track to start opening day and be there. And he made it back from his surgery to repair the hamate bone. So I really don't think there's any need to carry a backup shortstop on the roster. You have Bo Bichette, who's a natural shortstop. Polanco's played the position. Simeon's played the position. And if you're taking the best 26 guys, Mike Tauchman's going to be on the roster. He's going to be on your bench because he's had a great spring too. Carson Benj, to answer your question that we had to eliminate now because of the latest report, Carson Benj has earned his way. He's earned the starting spot in right field. He's batted over 400, 972 OPS this spring. He's really, really, really gone out there and grabbed it during camp. But Mike Tauchman's had a really good spring as well, and he deserves to be on a major league roster, whether that's the Mets or someone else. And I really think that they should hold on to him because he adds value off the bench.
He does, and the other thing I like about Benj, he's like a different kind of hitter. He's a slasher.
Yeah.
He hits the opposite field. He's got some pop. He's played a great right field. Look, I think this is a no-brainer, but there was always that thought process that, do they want to control the Super 2, and let him start the season with a positive mindset. And I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yeah, the same thing came up with Pete Alonso back in 2019, and Pete Alonso had a great spring, and it was his time to come up to the majors and make an impact on the big league club, and the same goes for Benj now. I mean, it wouldn't, this is the sexy move is having Benj start in right field on opening day, not Mike Tauchman. As good as Tauchman's been and as solid of a player as he is, especially hitting left-handed pitching, Benj has earned it. And not only is he good defensively in right field, he's got the arm for right field as well. He's a much better option than Juan Soto in right field defensively. So yeah, I think that David Stearns talked so much about run prevention this offseason. I think having Benj out there improves your run prevention.
Pat, when Met fans show up at Citi Field next week for the home opener, I think a lot of them, the 40-something thousand that are going to be there, they're going to have to buy a program, because if there's one word to describe the Mets from last year to this year, it's change. A lot of new faces.
Yep.
When you look at this team and the moves that they made and how different this roster looks, what's the general feeling around the team? I think a lot of people feel this is a team that will contend for a playoff spot. How do you look at it, and how do the guys on the team feel about all the changes that were made during the offseason?
I think it was tough for some of the guys who have been there and are still there, but at the same time, they seem to trust David Stearns and are going along with the changes that everyone recognized. Hey, we couldn't run it back after missing the playoffs last year and after coming up short for several years. They couldn't just run back the same roster, and they brought in some really talented players. Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco coming off the year that he had with the Seattle Mariners. Marcus Simeon's a Gold Glove second baseman. That improves your run prevention. I know that's been the buzzword, but um, you know, Freddie Peralta and changing things up in the bullpen. I know they wanted to keep Edwin Diaz. That wasn't part of the plan, was letting him go, but that now they have Devin Williams as their closer, Luke Weaver as their setup man. They brought in Luis Garcia. Like there's a lot of new faces, and the feeling around the team definitely is change and getting acclimated has been part of this spring program, and that's been a huge part of Carlos Mendoza's role this spring. But yeah, I think it was definitely time, to bring in new faces, and I think David Stearns has built a playoff team in the very least.
And if I could just follow up on that for just a second, Mark and Pat, you mentioned Carlos Mendoza. How's he handled all of this? Because this is obviously a big year for him, and now he's got a new look roster. What's been his demeanor in spring training, and how's he handling all the new faces?
I think he's a really known for being a really good communicator, and I think he's talked to guys when he's needed to talk to guys, and he's brought people together, and I think he's the right guy to lead this club and lead all the changes, and not just to the roster, but to his entire coaching staff. His entire coaching staff, besides Danny Barnes and Rafael Fernandez, were let go or not renewed, and he's had adjustments to make on the coaching staff and in the clubhouse. So I think he's handled it well. And yeah, I mean, Mendoza, the elephant in the room is that if they get off to a slow start, his seat is going to be very, very warm. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, but I think he's done a really good job this spring though overall.
For me, Pat, obviously Brett Beatty looks great. He has had such a good spring. He's spraying the ball. He's
Yeah.
hitting to the opposite field. When he first came up, he reminded me of John Olerud. He was a guy that I've been looking for, rooting for since he came up through the system. And, now his role has changed again. He seems to have handled it. He looks pretty smooth at first base. I think we're going to see a lot of Brett Beatty at first base.
Yeah.
And seems to have, played a decent outfield too. So, but with that in mind, obviously Beatty's making the team. Mark Vientos, and I posted this morning. Mark Vientos is a guy that everybody is just dragging on right now. Like they're, just dragging him down, criticizing the guy. I think it's easy to do that when a guy's struggling. But I think he makes the team. I don't think they're ready to just DFA this guy and give him up for nothing. And he's at his lowest value trade wise. Do you think, Vientos is going to make this team and they're going to give him like 150 at bats before they make a decision? Or is he on the team for the year?
Barring anything unforeseen like a trade before opening day, he's going to make the team. He's going to be a bench piece. I mean, Beatty's earned. You talk about Beatty. He's talking about having a great spring. Brett Beatty, offensively and defensively, and he's shown his versatility. He's looked good in right field. He's looked good at first base. He could easily be the starting first baseman. I think they want to give Polanco some runway, but Beatty looks really good at the position. He's just a natural athlete. And I think he's going to be a better version of Jeff McNeil and maybe a more versatile version of Jeff McNeil as well. I really like the strides that Beatty made at third base last season too. That's the one thing. The only disappointment of getting Bo Bichette is that we don't continue to see Brett Beatty develop at third base, at least for now. But Mark Vientos, I think the bigger thing that people should rag on him for is that he got away from his preparation last year. His preparation, his routine in 2024 led to his success, and for whatever reason, he strayed away from it last season. It must have been a very extraneous routine, I'm sure. And maybe he felt like this is just speculating, but maybe he felt like he didn't really need to go through all the preparation he was going through in order to have success. But he certainly learned the hard way last season. And yeah, he's had a brutal spring at the plate, in the World Baseball Classic, in Grapefruit League play. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be on the team the entire year, but they are going to give him a chance, like maybe 100 to 150 at bats to see what he can do and see if he still has value there with his bat. Because I mean, he profiles as a first baseman, a DH. He's not very good defensively, so he's really more so of a DH. But his power is real. Even in a down year last year, he still hit 17 home runs. But yeah, he's got to turn it around. He's got to turn it around quick. And he's probably lost playing time to start the season because of how brutal his spring was.
I think me and Peter would beat him in a foot race too. He is the slowest. He is the
No,
slowest
no.
Met of all time. He's slower than Magadan. He's slower than Keith Hernandez. He is so slow. It's hilarious. I'm sorry, Peter. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it wouldn't have happened before I had hip replacement surgery, and it's certainly not happening now
No,
that I
I
would
think
beat him every
I
day.
still think you could win. I still think.
Pat,
He-
I wanted to ask you about Nolan McLean, and obviously, it was a great thing for him to get selected for Team USA and
Yeah.
have that opportunity to pitch in a big game atmosphere. I'm sure he would have wanted some better results. So I thought in the championship game, he pitched a lot better than he did the first time. But what about that experience in those big games with big crowds and obviously, with the Mets expected to be in a race for a playoff spot? How does that build him up at a young age to get that experience to be in playoff type games like he was in the WBC?
Well, it gets him battle tested. It improves his composure. It's just like having him be ready for the moment, and they're testing him. And he seems, his attitude and demeanor and everything makes it seem like he's kind of born for the moment and born for the big game, and give him the ball in a must-win game. And that's what the Mets need out of him if he's truly going to be their number two starter, potentially their number one starter of the future. These types of games to get him battle tested. I mean, there was a very intense atmosphere in the World Baseball Classic. And like you said, he was pretty solid in the championship game. I believe 4 1/3, 2 runs allowed. The offense just didn't get it done in the World Baseball Classic for Team USA. So I think that these games are just very good to put on McLean's resume, and as he moves forward, it should help him this year in pitching in big games and under the bright lights.
Okay, this is a two-part question, Pat. The first part is there hasn't been a lot of talk about the Mets completely overhauled their pitching staff, their coaching staff, right? Completely overhauled it. And we haven't really heard much about, what they're doing differently. There hasn't been a lot outside of a few positive, rando comments. We haven't really heard a lot about the coaching staff. And do you think that's by design, that they really don't want to talk to the media about stuff like that? And also, if the Mets get off to a bad start, which to me would be disastrous, but if the Mets get off to a bad start, and they decide that it's Mendoza, right? Because they got rid of the coaching staff, they kept him, and they decide to fire Mendoza. Do you see any scenario where Carlos Beltran becomes the manager?
Well, the first part, I think there has been at least some chatter about the impact that Kai Correa has had in terms of working with the infielders, working with Bo Bichette, working with Jorge Polanco. But you're right, not a lot. And I think that's because the assistant coaches don't really talk to the media. Like that, they're just not really. In my years of covering the team, like I've really only I talked to Jeremy Hefner probably like 2 times over the years that he was there and the years I've been there. So and the rest of the assistant coaches just in passing, but not really on record, for interviews. But yeah, no, there is reason to this year. So it is a little surprising that no one's really talked to any of the assistant coaches to see what they're doing differently, other than the fact that Kai Correa, is known as the infield guru and should help improve their defense. That's really the stamp on it. And then the second part of that question. Yeah, I mean, Beltran had the manager's job for about a month years ago. Obviously, the sign stealing scandal put a damper on that. But I don't know. I don't see him coming down from the front office to take over as manager during the season. I mean, could it happen after the season if they get rid of Mendoza, even during the regular season potentially? but I think it would be Kai Correa who would take over since he's the bench coach, at least in season. Now, does Beltran even want to be manager? Does he like his role in the front office? That also remains to be seen. We don't really know.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that I think he would make a pretty good manager. At least he deserves a shot, whether it's with the Mets or with someone else at some point.
Pat, it's the 40th anniversary of the 1986 Mets World Series team. I was at the What's New at Citi Field event the other day, and I knew that Mookie Wilson could hit. I knew that he could run. I knew that he could catch the ball. I had no idea he was a cook. I got to tell you something, though, that pulled chicken sandwich that he made was unbelievable. Did you have any idea that Mookie Wilson was a cook, and he's going to be serving up some really good stuff at Citi Field this year?
No, that completely comes out of left field, pun intended. It's that's one of the biggest shocks of the Mets preseason, I think, and there's been a lot of shocks and surprises this year with all the overhaul. But yeah, Mookie Wilson.
There's only one Mookie. There's only one
There's
Mookie.
only one Mookie, the OG, of course. Being a chef, yeah, that's a big surprise.
Yeah, it was awesome. You guys got to try it when you get to Citi Field. I think that was my favorite thing that I had the other day at that event. It was great.
Well, look, Pat, I really appreciate you spending some time with us. We're running a little short on time, and I know you got to get back to it, getting ready for the season. We really look forward to thank you so much for joining us, and we really look forward to talking to you over the course of the season.
Yeah, of course. This was great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Take care.
We are running out of time, Peter, so we only have like one thing to get to, but I do want to say this, that of all the co-hosts I've had over the years, I really look forward to doing this podcast with you every Friday. I really do. I mean, you're going to get sick of me at some point. I tell you bring an enthusiasm and a professional like today, folks. Like, you don't even realize, the last minute stuff that happens, and we have to reset and do this and do that, and it's like working with a pro like you, Peter, is just an absolute pleasure. I just have to say that.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark, and I'm really glad to be working with you as well. I did want to get one Yankee note in before the end of the show. Sure. Garrett Cole got an inning on the mound the other day, which was really, really nice to see. He got through the inning, couple of hits, but he looked really good. I don't think it changes the timetable, which is probably around, as Susan Waldman told us last week, probably around mid-season. But what a sight for sore eyes to see number 45 on the mound the other day. And it was only for an inning, but it felt like it was a complete game seeing him, because we hadn't seen him in a while.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge for them. It's huge for them. It's almost like getting an ace at the deadline. I know that we used to do that when the Wilpons would do that, or when Brian Cashman would do that. Oh, we're getting him back from injury. It's like, getting somebody. But when you're getting somebody like Garrett Cole, and they're not going to rush him, that's certainly going to be. And look, the Yankees are going to be fine. I mean, they will be in a and we'll talk about, we'll break down and we'll do our preview, even though the season will have already started. We'll do our preview, a couple of games in next week, and try to figure out, where the Yankees are going to finish, where the Mets are going to finish. Certainly, it's going to be one of those shows. But getting Garrett Cole back, that really helps them. I don't think there's any question about that.
I got to figure out how to use Netflix, because the Yankees are on Netflix on Wednesday night, so I got to figure out how to use that.
I have Peacock, thank God. So I'll be able to watch. I think it's on NBC too, though. I think it's on NBC4.
Yeah.
I have not cut the cable, Peter. I pay way too much. I pay way too much for my TV, but I don't care. I'm not missing anything. So
no way.
No, absolutely not. So, hey, Peter, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week here on Gotham Baseball Live.